Hello guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about functions. This will be an introduction about functions. And yes, we're going to say several things about functions. It won't be a short video. First I want to say what is a function and why do we actually use it. Actually, JavaScript has built-in functions, like we have seen, replace, for example, replace, join, or random. We have seen that the replace function was able to, for example, was able to take from a list or from a string a name and replace it with another one. No? So we actually just need the replace function in itself. The replace function in itself it just do much more than what it actually is named says. It searches the name that it wants to replace, and it searches the name that it wants to replace, it finds it, it deletes it, and it puts on the same index this other replace. Other than saying name dot find the number, find the name, and then saying name dot delete name dot add. We just do all this logic. We can do it in one step, which is just using the replace built-in function. And as we have built-in function like replace, we can actually create function ourselves if we need a custom function, which is actually what the whole matter of coding, let's say, no? At least it's a very important thing, no? So for example, we we initialize I don't know, a function, for example, function cook, function clean, and this is I don't know, it's not a real function. Just inside the function clean we can add our logic, which is to clean the house, clean the floor, then you clean the kitchen, then you clean the toilet, then check for I don't know what it does. Clean the toilet, you understand what I mean. And this is actually a function in itself that now, after we have declared it and define what is actually doing, if you need if you need it, you just initialize it like this. You initialize it, and it will always do all the logic that you wanted, and etc. etc. Okay. What about function math? I already said invoke a function, which is just you just need to just name it after you declare it. So now it has no sense, it will throw an error because there is no function that is called clean. But after you have declared the function, you declare the function, you given it a logic, and then you can use it as when you want. But this, if you do like this, if you put this above the function, it will throw an error because your code will be read from the computer top to bottom, and so it will find this before this, and it will say, no, this is not I don't understand what you told me about, what you told me to do. Anyway, anyway, function and the method, we are not going, I don't, they are different, and I will talk about it later on. I wrote it, but I will talk about it later on. For now, just know that that they are similar in their practical use. They are similar, but method, they are similar. Then we talk about anonymous functions. Anonymous functions, which is what I created here. Um, which is what I created here. I created a bottom inside the body, and then we have this constant the bottom. I declared a constant. Then there is some logic that we didn't explain, but it's just grabbing the bottom element, and then the bottom. This is an event listener, and we will talk about it later. But after you click the bottom, it will trigger a function that doesn't have a name, and that's why it's called anonymous, an anonymous function. It doesn't have a name, and it just get triggered in this case on click. And if you come here, and we actually boom, it triggers the event and they show hello in the screen. Of course, you can give to an anonymous function a name. You could come here and write let variable, and then actually like this it's no sense, because you are actually giving a function a name, and so it's not anonymous anymore. But anyway, the point was to say that you can define a function that has no name, and this can be very useful in some cases that we will see, because we can you will see when we will see callbacks and other stuff, what is the use case for anonymous function. So let's move on and talk about scope and conflicts about scope. Scope can be variable, can be local or global. Local scope means that your variable is limited in its availability is limited inside one specific field, let's say. And now I show. Let's make an example about this. I'm declaring a variable. I'm declaring a variable with a parameter. So when I will call this variable, I will need a parameter. I will need to add a parameter, otherwise there will be problems. So now I declare the variable with its parameter, and now I will initial. It doesn't matter. I understood. Now I initialize the variable, and I'm giving it a parameter, which is just hi. Okay. So now I will just now let's see on the console, and the result is of course predictable. Available here hi. Okay. Now I try to make this statement exactly as it is. Let's just write not to be coherent, because of course uncaught error, reference error, x is not defined. The point is that this x has been declared inside this variable, exists here. It exists in this function, not variable, function, not outside, so it will throw an error. etc., etc. Okay, this was there is some sort of an exception. There is some sort of an exception for this. For example, because there is the possibility to use the return statement, which it actually will make our it will make our variable be available outside the statement. But of course it will not be, it will seem that it is, but actually it's not. But now I'm changing my function to make what I said, and I'm adding a return statement which is returning epsilon. So I declare the variable epsilon, which has the value I return, so it will console log available here, I'll return. Then I return the variable epsilon. Then here I will initialize a second variable which stores our function, and then I will try to console.log. Let's say something that makes sense. Okay, and I'm saying console.log outside the function called, and I call the function because now z is equal to the function. And then console.log perfectly not available here, and I don't call z but I call epsilon. I hope I didn't put too many semicolons around, but it should work. Okay, so available here. Now let's return to the code. Available here because I called the function. I call this function is console logging. Now I declare the function, then I call the function here, and of course it has a console log inside. So is console logging available here, I'll return. Then outside the function I'll return because I console logged outside the function, and then I call this function which has a return statement. So this variable, this function doesn't get lost, but the value of the function gets stored inside z, and so I call z, and it writes I'll return. But then if I try to write to access the epsilon, which is a variable declared in a local scope, of course it will return an error, reference error, epsilon is not defined. Okay, I think this is enough to about local scope and its little exception that is not an exception. Now let's talk about the difference between var and let. Okay, so first let's say I declare another variable, and the point is that var and let are var is function scoped and let is block scope. Now let's understand what this means. That in a way I don't want to say that var is more extended, but it's var is available inside the whole function it lives into. Let is available inside the block. The block is the part of your code that is between two curly braces. Okay, so now I used var. I call the function. There's no parameters, so like this it's okay. And now it should output. Local. Local. Because var can be accessed from the function scope. So now it didn't throw any error. Now let's change it to let. Open the live server, which I of course shut down because doing things simply is not possible. Uncaught reference error, x is not defined at do thing, blah blah blah. Okay, because as I said, let is block scope. A final difference between let and var is related to the order of declaration. Okay, so let's change this code a little. Let's change this code. I put this. Okay, I put this here. And okay, and here it says uncaught reference error cannot access x before initialization. Okay, it has thrown an error. Now let's come and use var. Now I didn't shut down, thank God. So we can come here, undefined. Now it didn't throw an error, but it's just saying, okay, you have console logged a variable that is not defined because you put this sentence before this. This is due to a phenomenon called hoisting, which means that using a var variable before it's been declared result in the variable being undefined. And okay, hosting is not is a more complex topic, but just for now, just understand that this it doesn't matter really. Okay, last thing is about const for local variables, which doesn't change much of compared to let, because they have the same logic. So if now I do like this and I update my server, I come here and it still has the same problem as with let. Furthermore, if you const, the name says everything about it himself. A const variable is constant, and so you cannot change it on the go. And this is it. This is its feature. Okay, this is it for the local variable. Now we will talk about global. As you of course have guessed, global variables are declared outside function and not in some code block. And they are accessible in any lower scope, let's say. So if a variable is declared at the top level of your code, it will be accessible everywhere. Now let's give this a real example that will explicate. Okay, so now let's what I did, I created a variable outside at the top level, outside the function, any function. Then I'm console logging it from the outside function. Then I created a function with a parameter. The function console log the variable that I created outside the function. Then I'm calling the function, and then I'm console logging again. So every kind of possibility is shown in this code snippet. And as you can see, other than this is no sense. It's not related. Everything has worked fine. So as you can see, variable that has been declared inside a block are always in scope, and it doesn't really matter where they are. Anyway, you can hide their accessibility if needed. I will create another code. So in this code, I created two variables with the same name. One is the global variable, and the other is local. What I wanted to show is that if you have defined an x variable that is global and you are using it everywhere, but you want to override it inside a specific function, so that inside that function has a different value, you can. In fact, we come here, and this code snippet is showing both local and global. Now let's see it again. Function function doing stuff, let x equal to local, console.log x. Then I call this function, and so it says local. Then I'm console.logging x, which is of course taking the global variable because this is not accessible from here. And so the result is local and global, local and um, local and global. Same is if I for parameters. So if here I write something, is if here I write something as a parameter, it would sorry. But this okay, take off this. Now it should console log something inside doing stuff, even if it says console.log x. No, there is something wrong, because I didn't give a parameter to the function. My mistake is not that. Anyway, let's see now. Now I give it the parameter, and it will console log something and global. Okay, so same is for parameters. Okay. Another, I want to show, I want to say as a first instance that it's wrong to rely too much on it is wrong to rely too much on global variables, because maybe inside a small is in a small project it works, but as things get bigger is much better to stick to the use of variables inside the function, because it's much more easy to control what actually is happening and to troubleshoot the things, because it might become a mess if you play too much um, with scope, then can become troublesome. I want to show you something, some shitty code. So here I declare the variable guess my scope inside the function guess my scope. Then I call the function. Then I call the variable outside the function. You already know what it should do. But actually it's not throwing any errors. It should have thrown an error outside the function, but it didn't. Why? Because x has been declared as without let var const or any prefixes, let's say any keyword. And so the JavaScript understands it to be um, a global function, and it uses it as a global function. It has to be said that this is not unintended behavior or something that you should do. So you just have, we said this, never do it in your life, and that's it. But okay, yes, it exists. Last thing that we can talk about before moving to the next function, which is not a big deal, is what we call immediately invoked function expression, um, which it's nothing more. I mean, it's a way of expressing functions so that it gets invoked immediately. What does it mean? That the function is anonymous in itself. In fact, there is an anonymous function here, and is self-executing. So generally, you like here, I declare. You already know this. I declare this function, and then I declare this function, then I execute it. Now, immediately after I declare the function, it gets executed. This can be useful in some design patterns and to create private and public variables and function. The function in itself here is surrounded by parentheses, um, which makes the function an instance, and without the parentheses it would throw an error. You can do it in even another way. I will code this other way, which is by the use of an arrow function, which might sound a little vague to many, but let's say it, why not? Um, yes, this is complicated stuff actually. It is not really something that normally you will face after the second day you start coding in JavaScript probably, but let's just complete the chapter of global variables. So this is another way to use an immediately invoked function expression. This time I'm using, it's the same thing. Now I just wrote another thing, but I'm doing the exactly same thing than before. But now I'm using, it's an even more concise way in a way, no? Because I'm using the arrow function to self-execute this function that I didn't even write function. Okay, this is all about global variables. I think I said too much. I make an example about nesting functions. Nesting function is not really even a topic. I wrote it, and so I will not skip it. It's just a way that you can organize your code. Is not a topic, is something really easy. So but sometimes it's something that you actually have to do. For example, when you want to generate a table, for example, for example, generate a table. This is a practical example where you could use something like this, and maybe you want to generate this table. You want to generate this table, and you don't want to use HTML or CSS, but only JavaScript. So you really need to do everything with the dynamic features of JavaScript, and it will become. I mean, you should do a lot of things. So of course, you will have to create more function, and then you will call the same function. For example, create, I don't know, just a simple example, create rows, oh shit, create columns, create, I don't know, I'm just inventing, label, just to say that this is possible. And then you come here, and rather than doing all the function, you start editing your function. You create create rows here, and you actually create it, and then you open, and you create, and then you create your create label, and so on and so forth. Okay, this was everything I wanted to say as an introduction for JavaScript. We already have gone into something a little complicated, but was quite needed. And now we will talk about something else. We will move on into the functions into the function topic. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.